All right, so what I'd like to do now is take some of what we learned around media queries and apply it to our not very beautiful website, the starter code I've given you, to make this navbar responsive. So we're going to use Flexbox. We'll actually make it look not nice, but we'll lay it out better. And then we'll make it responsive and have it stack in a column better than it does right now once we get to a smaller mobile size. And we'll also work on this text in here. It's a bit cramped. I don't want it to break onto two lines like that. I want it to stay on one line on smaller devices. So why don't we start there? One option is to figure out, where it starts to get too cramped and take note of that size. So around 680 pixels or so. Another option is to use standard breakpoints. There are some common ones that there's a bit of consensus around, but that does not mean that they're the right breakpoints. These have just been popularized by tools like Bootstrap, which we're about to see. So from 0 to 776 pixels would be a portrait phone. From 576 to 768 would be a landscape phone. Tablets are and you get where I'm going with this. But this is not at all, set in stone. There are mobile devices that are not in this range. That are greater than 576 in their landscape mode. Even just within, iPhones or a single product range, there's a lot of variation in sizes. But we can go with one of these. Let's do, what have we been looking at here? Where did it get cramped again? Let's say around 7. Yeah, let's just use these. 767, 768. So I'm going to do @media. And then I'm going to shrink that H1 down once we get to anything below that font size. So I'm going to, or that width, so max width, and 768 pixels. I'm going to select all H1s, font size, and I don't know what I have right now, 6Ms. Yeah. Let's maybe do 4Ms. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, so we start large 6Ms, then we hit that breakpoint, and we go down to 4Ms, and then we should probably have one more in here. We can just do our, 576 and below, if we want to do that. So I'll duplicate this, 576, right there, and let's maybe do 2Ms. That might be too small. Yeah, that's pretty tiny. So, it looks good on like this size, but it's very rare to have a mobile device like with 200 something pixels for its screen width. So maybe we'll do 3Ms or 2.5Ms or something. Okay, so there we go. We've made that somewhat responsive. Now let's talk about the navbar. So what I want this navbar to do is it's actually 3 pieces. I want the home button or the home link to stay on the left. I want sign up to go all the way on the right. And then I want these 3 middle links, learn more about and contact. I want them to be centered. Trying to see if there's an example of this anywhere. I guess, yeah, like this. It's not exactly the same. I want ours to go all the way to the left and all the way to the right, and then this to be centered. But there's a distribution of content. It's not just all centered, right, or all on the left or right. So we can use Flexbox to help us with that. What I actually have, and I've already done this in the markup, is I've broken our code up into one link and then a UL that has these middle 3 links and then our link at the end. But they're not all in the same UL. So we've got our link and then a group with 3 links and then a single link again. So if I make this nav Flexbox, or if I give it display of flex, I can control the 3 elements inside and move them around nicely. So I'm going to select that nav. I think I've already selected it. There it is. Display of flex. And then nice and easy, I'm just going to give it a justify content. I could start with center. It's not what I want. Now everything is centered, but what I want is space between. Remember, there's only 3 items inside. So 1, 2, 3. Space between pushes them away from each other. So that looks good. Well, it doesn't look good, but that will work. But then things get definitely too cramped. Maybe I don't want these links right next to each other. So I'm going to give that UL a border so you can see what's going on here. Let's do just UL border, 1 pixel solid red, just so you can see where it is. So that's the UL. Maybe I want it to take up a bit more space. So I could give it a flex grow. So I can select that right here, and I can do just our shortcut flex property. But now it grows to take up all of that space. So maybe I'll give it a max width of, how about 50% of the container? And then inside of that, I can now actually make this a flex container itself. So nothing to do with breakpoints yet, but what I'm showing you is that we can have nested flex boxes, very common. So this whole nav is a flex box, and it has just justified content of space between. And then the middle element is now going to be a flex box. So display flex. We won't see anything different, but now I can distribute the content in here. I could center it. Yeah, I could do, what do I want? Justify content. How about space, maybe space evenly? Okay, and there we go. So now it's working. It's not beautiful, but right, we've got that space. So it will grow to take up more space than it needs, but then it hits this maximum width, and once it hits there, it doesn't grow any further. So now let's address when it gets too cramped. Let's say, right about there, really, once these links start to get too small, I have a couple of options, but I'm just going to stack everything on top of one another in a column. So that's pretty easy with Flexbox. I'll get rid of this dictionary. All we need to do is set flex direction to row. We just have to decide when. So let's see, where does that make sense? Probably around that 700, whatever the breakpoint is. I can't even remember. I always mix them up. But right around here, where are you? There we go, 768. So below 768, I'm going to select that nav, and I'm going to give it, not display, flex direction column. So now we have two different selectors, two sets of rules for this screen size and below. All right, let's refresh and see what happens. So we start out with our row still, then we hit that breakpoint, and now we go into a column. It's not beautiful. There's a couple things I would do. First, I don't think we want these links to be on a row either, so I'm going to make that in a column. So that's the nav, I'm just going to do this selector, descendant. So nav, UL instead of nav, flex direction of column as well. So we're going to have two columns, one column nested inside the other. Okay, and then we could leave it left aligned like this, but I might just center everything. So which property is that? It's not justify content anymore. The main axis is up and down. We need the cross axis, left to right. So align, items, and then center. Okay, and then I'll do the same for our box, the UL here, align, items, center. And actually, looking at this, we could really combine this. We're doing the exact same thing to both of them. So we could just do this, nav, and then nav, UL. And we get the same result. So we go from our row, where we have this element growing a bit. These guys are spaced on the right and left. And then we hit our breakpoint, and they go into a column layout, stack on top of one another. We can get rid of that border, wherever that is. Nothing's going to look terribly nice here, but it still is, it's at least demonstrating the principle of using breakpoints alongside Flexbox. And this is also the first time we've seen using nested flex containers. So we've got our first main nav that has display of flex, and then nested inside, one of the child elements is actually a flex container to organize these links. All right, so that's our first example of building something using breakpoints. Nothing crazy, nothing beautiful, but it's a start.